Are we live? Yes, we made it. Hello, my friends. Jill Osborne from the Interstitial Cystitis Network. It is Sunday, May 17th, 2026. And it's time for another live IC support group meeting. Man, this month is just flying by. This is crazy how quick time is going. Hello, everybody. My name is Jill Osborne. I am the president and founder of the Interstitial Cystitis Network. I work with men and women who have pelvic injuries, pelvic pain, pelvic discomfort, Hunner's lesions, any sorts of weird random infections such as pink mold. When you think bladder infection, you think bacteria, right? Yeah. Guess what? You can get mold. You can get fungus. You can get candida in your bladder. Oh, I lost my little thingy on my microphone. Where'd it go? Anyway, my goal in doing these meetings is to provide hope for patients who are often homebound. You know who you are, often isolated, alone, struggling, wondering if anybody can relate to what you're going through, wondering if people care. I care. Because this happened to me. My first symptoms were at the age of 13. Couldn't sit through class. Teachers complained, why does Jill keep having to get up? And, doctor's visits ensued. Everybody said I had an incurable disease. Guess what? I didn't have a disease at all. I had an injury. I had fallen and broken my tailbone. We didn't know back then that would lead to years of pain and discomfort and a misdiagnosis until we actually found the underlying problem. And the underlying problem was, in fact, a nerve injury. What's going on? Hold on a sec. What's going on with my eyebrow there? That's just kind of weird. Is that fixing it? Or am I going the wrong way? Okay, that's better. Okay. Decades, I lived with a wide variety of pelvic pain symptoms. I had vulvodynia. I had to pee all the time. I had IBS. I had what we thought were yeast infections all the time. I had migraines. I developed these crazy sensitivities. Just the things that happened would put anybody on their knees, and they certainly had me on my knees for many years. I felt depressed. I felt despondent. All of my friends were going out and living their lives, and I was at home just literally in pain every single day. Couldn't sleep. Nighttime was the worst. I felt at night like, what was the point of trying to sleep when I'd be in so much pain? So I developed a fear of sleeping, and so I would go to bed later until finally it was completely normal for me to go to bed at 4 a.m. Obviously very sleep deprived. It's rather amazing that I got through graduate school, but I did. There's good news, though. There's really good news, though. And the good news, though, is that I never had a disease. What I had was a very complex injury. And it was an injury that every doctor missed. And it wasn't until we found it when I was in my 40s that I was able to get the right treatment, which is pelvic floor physical therapy. And once I had pelvic floor physical therapy, lots and lots of things got better. And I am a completely different person today. But there's a part of me that grieves over the lost decades because of a lack of knowledge on the part of doctors and a lack of sympathy for patients. Hello, Ann. It's nice to see you. Hello, Deborah on YouTube. It's nice to see you too. So I am having a day, and I need to say some things because I am tired of I see patients being treated like shit. I am tired of doctors saying it's all in your head. I am tired of pharmaceutical companies making billions of freaking dollars selling treatments that don't help us and hurt us. Oh, Anne says she cannot hear. Huh. Testing 1, 2, 3. Let's do a sound check on Facebook. Anybody else on Facebook? Can you hear me? Let me look at my settings again. I mean, I did set you up on, you are set up on this microphone. Hold on a sec. Sound check. Can you hear me? I know you guys are good on YouTube, but I'm not so sure about Facebook. Hold on a sec. Let me all right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Anne, can you hear me now? All right. For those of you, hey, anybody over on YouTube? You could not hear on Facebook. Chris, can you go check Facebook and see if you can hear me now? Because I did switch the microphone. Just out of curiosity. If you could do that, I would really, really appreciate that. Let me see what we can do here. Okay, Anne says she can hear me now. Hello. Yes. You know, I mean, you got to understand, great, Deborah, that streaming is challenging. Streaming is really, really, really challenging. And there's all sorts of moving pieces, and all it takes is one piece to break, and then the whole thing breaks, and oh boy, we're screwed. And now I got an eyelash in my eye again. Okay. I feel like I just need to restart or restart the meeting. Okay. Okay, so for those of you on Facebook, sorry about that. The sound was weird. I'm going to put that microphone away. You're now on the main default microphone on this computer. Hopefully the quality will stay good, and hopefully there's not an echo. Who knows at this point in time? Okay. So I got a couple things I really need to talk about today. Okay. Like, it is building inside of me like a volcano. I am so heartbroken for the patients who are calling me now literally every single day, who have developed eyesight issues, retinal damage, blindness, and or inflammatory bowel disease, and many have now had their bowel removed. And you know, some of them, they had the bowel stuff before the eye stuff. And of course, we now know what that's associated with, and that is the use of the only FDA-approved medication for eyes, the pentose and polysulfate, also known as Elmiron. We have been working on a new patient registry. I sent that off to top doctors that I know. And the doctor who's doing the eye research was just like, good job. Let me bring in a grad student. We're going to work on this with you. And the other doctor completely dismissed it. Well, didn't completely dismiss it. Just, I don't see it. I don't see these patients anymore. Where is the effing anger on behalf of these patients who have been hurt? Who is fighting for you? In the urology community, nobody. Nobody. And I don't understand it. It's the eye researchers that are doing the work, and I'm doing the work. But where are the urologists? It's like they're pretending you're not here. And it's like they're pretending that this hasn't happened. And we had right now, the American Urology Association meeting is going on right now. They had the class on IC yesterday. Right there. What was one of the treatment options? Pentose and polysulfate. There was one slide that talked about the eye issue. I don't know if they talked about the bowel issue. They didn't have a slide on it. I was not listening. I could not listen. I was doing something else. I will be listening to it after the fact. But it is so disappointing to see these hundreds of doctors being educated that this is a viable treatment option when so many patients are getting hurt. And it's not just patients just talking about this on the internet. Man, this is $43 million have been paid so far to patients who have developed eye damage. Biggest award so far that I have a patient that I've worked with, she got $1 million. It is a clear and undeniable fact that there were lawsuits that have settled because of the damage this medication has caused. And yet these guys are freaking oblivious to it. And I am so annoyed. There are still patients right now who are being told by some urologists this is safe. And what the urologist says is, well, I've never seen this in my clinic. It's like, do you want to see the research? Do you want to see all the research? Do you want to see the many, many studies in fact, there's a brand new one of eye doctors who are documenting this retinal disease. It is real. These patients have the risk of going blind, for God's sake, and you're telling them it's safe? God damn you. Every single one of you who, not you guys, not patients, those doctors who are minimizing the risks. Because you know what? Who's left to pick up the pieces? Who's going to be there for the patients after they go blind? So one of my clients, she got a settlement for her eye issues. It was a small settlement. She's 79 years old, and her doctor just told her that she has carpet polyps and she needs to have her bowel removed. They call it, one doctor called it Elmiron polyposis. It's just or pentose and polysulfate, pentose and polyposis. The doctor actually said Elmiron though. Okay, so apparently what's happening is this medication is triggering the growth of a massive amount of polyps. So the bowel becomes what looks like a carpet of polyps. And the problem with that is sometimes the polyps get big and block the bowel. In other cases, carpet polyps are considered a greater risk of bowel cancer. Hi, Kayleen. Happy Sunday to you too. And God, this week it hit me so hard because every single day a patient called and nobody's there for them. The doctors are not there for them. The urologists are silent. Why are the urologists silent about this? I just don't understand it. I don't understand it. I think maybe there's a little bit of fear because they were the ones prescribing it based upon what the early research said. Maybe they're concerned that they might get sued. I don't know. But given the risk now, I think any doctor who says, hey, it's safe, I've never had a problem in my clinic, I think those doctors are potentially really opening themselves up to issues because we now have study after study after study showing that this can happen. And so I'm so disappointed. I'm disappointed in the IC community. I'm disappointed in the IC activists out there who are not talking about this more. I am disappointed in urologists, disappointed in the urology organizations. Because, listen, man, at least we got some of this knowledge here. It is being prescribed over in Europe like gangbusters. And apparently, there is some effort to try to reformulate it. It's like, why would you do that? Come on. Because this is $1 billion market, apparently. I could say more, but, I got to be careful what I say here. To every patient out there who has taken this medication, if you have suffered eye issues, if you have suffered bowel issues, you need to Google MedWatch and you need to file a report with the MedWatch adverse event database. At a minimum, we need to get these medical associations to start talking about the inflammatory bowel disease. We need to update their Wikipedia page, for God's sake. That was hard enough trying to get it updated with retinal stuff. We need to develop the data, which is why we're starting a patient registry. We need, in my opinion, to get our senators involved, our congresspeople involved. Here is a medicine associated with these risks. Should it still be? I don't know. Should the FDA look at the approval and look at all the new data? Hell yes. I think they should. I believe that they should. So anyway, like the last email I got on Friday was somebody who emailed me and said, I guess I need to tell you about my story about what happened to me with Elmiron in my bowel. And I will be talking to him this week. Lori says, I'm so thankful you brought this issue forward regarding the polyps. You're the one who made me aware. I am one who ended up with a carpet of polyps and resulted in cancer. At the time, I thought it was a genetic issue. Thankfully, my kids don't have to be concerned. Yeah, and our new patient registry is actually asking specifically, have you had, because that's what a lot of doctors are saying, both for the eye issues and the bowel issues. Maybe it's genetics. Maybe you've got a genetic condition that's creating this risk for you. And so pretty much every patient's had the DNA testing and there's been no genetic risk at all. They haven't found any genetic risk associated with the retinal disease. And I think most importantly, guys, and we've got the published case studies, you've got patients who've used Elmiron who have gotten severe bowel issues, inflammatory bowel disease. They see visible changes, dysplasia in the bowel. And then when they stop the medication, the bowel heals. And there are multiple published case studies like that. So if it wasn't a better example of cause versus effect than that. So anyway, I hope you will join me in trying, and Lori here, who is a patient who is afflicted with this, in trying to educate as many people about this as I can, as we can collectively. We have a lot of work to do in the next year, and I'm on it, man. I'm on it. I'm doing everything I can. But I just don't understand why there are people out there, there are urologists out there who are telling patients that it's safe, that there's no risk. It's breaking my heart. And, I'm a really compassionate person. When you talk on the phone, I've got really good defenses for myself, because when you're talking with patients who are very, very ill all day, every day, like I do, you got to make sure that you don't bring it all into your soul, because then that would be very hard too. I normally have really good defenses. I normally don't get upset about things, but I am really legit upset about it. The other problem for me right now is that this is the anniversary of my mom's death, literally 3 hours ago. And grief is a beast. And so I put her picture back there because my mom came with me. Listen, the IC network would not have happened. I would not be alive today if it were not for my parents. And my mom worked a full-time job, and she got me to every doctor's appointment. She was a teacher. And then, as the years went past and I became an adult, she was still there. She was still there for me. You couldn't ask for anybody better. Always holding my hand, caring for me while I was crying in pain, because I legit was crying in pain. She came with me to every IC conference. We traveled the world talking about IC. She held my place in the security line while I ran to the bathroom. She was a wonderful, wonderful mom. And I was thinking this morning, I was going, oh God, do I want to do a support group meeting today? Because it's hard. It's hard. And I could hear her say, don't remember how I died, remember how I lived. And I believed in your work, and I want you to do your work. So that's why I'm doing this meeting today, even though it's a hard day. Oh, grief comes in waves, my friend. Grief comes in waves. Y'all, some of you met her. She would come in here all the time. So, thank you, Mom. And I also know legitimately that she is in a much better place, that she is very happy to be able to walk again, and she is not living in the pain that she lived in at the age of 94. My dad lived to 100.5, and my mom lived to 94. And honestly, they were all there to the very end. There were no dementia. No dementia at all. I was kind of shocked. I guess there was a part of me that didn't think they would go, but eventually they did. But they're happier now. No pain, no stress, no fires, no more fires. We just didn't. No more doctor's appointments, no more infusions, no more constipation, no more running to the bathroom. All the things that somebody who's elderly faces. And if there's just like one thing I would just say to you guys, it's that number one, caregiving is an honor, and it's the hardest work you will ever do. Ever do. And I'm still 3 years later rebuilding my soul. I did not realize how exhausted I was from caregiving. And then the other thing is how so many of our elderly are forgotten. The kids go on, the grandkids go on, and there you got a 94-year-old who has a birthday, and nobody acknowledged her but me and my best friend. And I think she and my sister gave her flowers. Like everybody else was gone. They just get forgotten. So please don't forget your grandmothers and grandfathers and your great-grandmas and your great-grandfathers. There's like one thing you can just remember from this is they're desperate to hear from you. They're desperate to share your life. And yes, they're hard of hearing. And yes, you have to yell. And yes, you might have to go pick them up and help them walk. But they birthed you. They took you to school thousands of times. Now you get to go care for them. And I really hope that you will, because they deserve it. All right. Kayleen says, my urologist and I were talking about bladder installations that my grandmother was a few months before she passed. It's a definite gift. This past Mother's Day was hard. Yeah, it was. It was. So what bladder installation are you guys talking about, my friend? What are you talking about? All right. So I don't, because I was crying this morning and last night, I honestly, I legit was. I was just having a really hard morning. I didn't prepare anything other than just being angry about Pentosin. And so I am here for your questions. I am fine. Tears are normal. It is important to let it out. We have to let the stress out. We have to let the anger out. We have to let the sadness out. The last thing we want to do is let it accumulate so that we just kind of get angrier and angrier, sadder and sadder. A healthy expression of emotions is important. And I'm all about just letting it fly. And it is okay to let it fly. If you need to go scream when a train goes by, do it. If you need to go hit a pillow, do it. I just don't want you to yell at a family member or kick a pet. For God's sake, please don't do that. But we have to take responsibility for our stress and our emotions and move on from that, right? Just let it go. Hello, Kathy. Olga says hugs to you. Thank you, Olga. Joe said sending hugs to you. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel my mother saying to me right now, I'm fine and I'm relieved and I'm happy that I'm not a burden to you, and I'm happy that I'm comfortable now instead of being in pain. I believe that 100%. I know that that's true. So what's happening? Oh, guys, I got to tell you. So hold on, man. There was a whole bunch of new stuff that just got sent to me. Let me find it real quick. It's really interesting. Now, here, hold on a sec. Okay. So, looks like we're going to have a new clinical trial that we're going to be promoting briefly. I will tell you the IC Food app has now been submitted to the App Store. And for those of you who were not here last week, let me show this to you. Oh, here, hold on a sec. Here, hold on. Okay. So we have a new food app. And for those of you who are participating in the contest, here, hold on a sec. Let me show you the splash screen again. Okay, for me to do that, believe it or not, because it's in test flight right now. So hold on a sec. So I will show you the final version of the app, and it is looking fantastic. I'm thrilled with it. Never before been done in the IC world. You're going to have access to this AI that we built. So it's not AI from the internet that's bunky. It's AI from information that's curated and developed through the IC network. You can ask any question that you want. The app is going to give you a thorough, good, long, compassionate, supportive answer. It's so cool. Okay. There you go. Oh, there's the splash screen. So the watermelon won. So whoops, hold on a sec. So the first part of the app is a bunch of categories. So if you've seen our newly updated from last year food list, we put all the foods in categories. So we've got, here, hold on. Fruits and vegetables, grains, dairy, nuts. And I'm sorry, there's a light right here that will shine on it, which is why I have to hold it at an angle. Yeah, that's the best I can do. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to click on a category. And, oh, here, hold on. That was my hand. Okay. So you're going to click on a category and you're going to see an alphabetized list of foods. So here in fruits and vegetables, the first one is apples, then applesauce, then apricots, artichoke. So really long list. So there's hundreds and hundreds of foods in our database. So let's just click on apples. And then you can see it's broken down into our 3-column for it. Green, which means bladder friendly, yellow, which is kind of try it first. Red is caution. Okay. This was our top secret project that I didn't talk to you guys about for a couple of months. Because I wanted to see where it was going to go. Because I built apps before for IC and we lost money on them. This one, we're not going to lose money on them. This is, I mean, it's going to pay for itself. It's going to be very incredibly affordable, like under $5. Okay. What's cool about this app, if you click on the hamburger, there is a food search and there is AI help. So if you click on food search, there you go. You can type in the food you want to check out. So let's just put in, here, I'm going to put in chocolate. Let's see what it says about chocolate. All right. So you can see over on the right-hand side, you've got, see the red cautions versus the worth a try. The worth a try is going to be a white chocolate, but chocolate by its very nature is actually very neuroinflammatory and it's not recommended. Okay, and then you can go to the AI section and it's saying, hi, I'm your IC 101 food assistant. Ask me anything about bladder-friendly foods, what to avoid, or dietary tips for interstitial cystitis. And you can ask anything you want. And so I'm going to put in coffee. Yeah, let's do coffee first. Okay, you can see it's thinking. It takes a minute. Yeah, I mean, it takes seconds. Okay, so I'm going to read it out. It's saying, hey there, let's talk about coffee and how it fits into your dietary needs, especially if you're concerned about bladder health. General guidance on coffee. You want to avoid regular and decaf traditional coffees. They're high in acid and caffeine. But you can try the herbal coffees, the bladder-friendly coffees like Dandy Blend. And then she talks about low-acid decaf coffee. Gives a really, really long answer. Lots and lots of options there on coffee. See that? I am thrilled with this. And it's literally staged on this screen. And it's in the App Store. It's an App Connect. And part of it's been submitted, and we're just dealing with this one last little part that I have to figure out. And then we are good to go. So now the next question is, what am I going to do next? Like I am in this, I want to make stuff mode, you know? I just want to make more. So I'm going to be updating our pain management guide. That's so incredibly important. What I really love I'm seeing right now are a lot of activists on the internet who are now recognizing the terrible toll that's happening to patients who are being denied pain medicine. Heartbreaking. I can tell you, I would not be here today if I had not had access to Vicodin. In my first couple of years with IC, when my pain was so severe, I don't know if I could have made it. You know, my pain was about as bad as it can get. Susan, thank you so much for the 50 stars. Robbie says, wow, that AI feature will be cool. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So we're just seeing more and more pushback now on how we're treating pain patients. So I chaired the state of California Summit on Chronic Pain like 15 years ago. I have testified on the need for opiate medicines for patients who might be dealing with injuries. I will tell you, I would never, ever, ever have surgery without first having a discussion with that surgeon about pain care. And both with my mastectomy and with my gallbladder removal, I told them all, I'm not doing it until I have a prescription in my record where you're going to give me opiate medication for at least a week. And my surgeon for my double mastectomy was like, well, hell yeah, I'm not doing the surgery without you getting opiates for sure. you're going to need it. But there are patients out there right now who are having surgery and they're being sent home with Tylenol. And I don't trust a hospital to make that decision for me. I'm going to make that decision. I'm going to make that decision with my surgeon, and I'm going to push on it. Okay, so anyway, when we did our summit on chronic pain, I worked with the DEA. Oh my God, I could have had an affair with the DEA agent. He was so freaking cute and so nice, but I didn't. Oh, the crazy things you see. Our governor signed our Pain Patients Bill of Rights, and then it all went to hell. And the reason why it went to hell is because making synthetic drugs became a giant moneymaker. And then you had pharmaceutical companies who saw this as, hey, we can make millions and millions and millions of drugs and doctors will prescribe them because we've told the doctors that these medications are safe. And it turns out they weren't safe. And there were so many millions of drugs out there that they eventually fell into the hands of addicts, and they got big black market, and they drove what we now know as the opiate crisis, with hundreds and if not thousands of people who have died from taking opiate medications recreationally. The challenge here is and I think it was the Center for Disease Control came together to create new guidelines. It was all top secret. We didn't even know who was on that committee. And then at the end of this year-long discussion on new guidelines, they came out with these brutal guidelines that basically threw every single patient off opiate meds out of this tremendous fear of addiction. You have to remember that an addict takes pain meds to escape their life. A responsible use of pain meds is somebody who's taking them because they're trying to do the things they need to do to function in their life. That's a clear educational point that was used when we did the hearings up in Sacramento. If you're taking meds to escape responsibilities, you absolutely have an addiction. If you're taking meds or you need to take meds so that you can do the things you need to do, whether it be work or whatever, then you're using them for the correct reason, potentially. But anyway, these draconian guidelines came out, and patients who were taking small doses of medication prescribed by one doctor for years, doing very, very well, highly, highly functional. You take somebody who's got, like, say, a really bad back, something like that, they all got thrown off their meds. And it was a massacre. It was an utter massacre. Some of those patients turned to heroin. They were in agony. Their doctors wouldn't give them anything. Tylenol, Advil wouldn't touch it. Some of them turned to street meds to try to get some pain relief. Others took a very different pathway and decided that they could not live through it. Then we found out who was on the committee. And you know what? There wasn't a single chronic pain specialist on that committee. You know who was on that committee? People who benefited from that, people who ran drug rehabilitation programs. And everybody was like, oh, now we know why they wanted to get everybody off of these pain meds, because they're going to have to go into a pain center, and those pain centers are going to make money. So the chronic pain advocates got very, very angry, and they were able to push back. The Center for Disease Control did a re-edit and remove some of those restrictions, but the damage was done. And legit now, you've got doctors who are afraid to prescribe opiate meds. They're afraid of the DEA. They're afraid of, in California, the Bureau of Narcotics Enforcement. So there are some doctors out there who won't give any at all anyway, despite the fact that some of those guidelines were released, but now we're still stuck there. And so there are some very good advocates online who are showing case study after case study after case study of patients who can legitimately use very, very small doses of an opiate medication so that they can function correctly. I saw a picture of somebody who had like a hole in their abdomen, like this big, an open wound in their abdomen, who was denied pain care. Come on. Come on. It's crazy. Lori says, happiness. It feels good to see and hear you today with energy and intention and love. Oh, Lori, it's nice to see you. I hope life is still going well in New Zealand. I don't even know what time it is in New Zealand right now. Okay, so anyway, let me go back here. Again, I apologize. I'm a little scattered today. It's a little difficult. It has been a little bit difficult and a little bit emotional for me today. Okay, so first study, lived experiences of women with interstitial cystitis. Okay, let's see what this study has to say. There you go. This is a good one. Interstitial cystitis significantly affects women's overall well-being. Limited research has explored the lived experiences of women with IC. They did a study a qualitative study with 18 patients with IC in Taiwan. They did big interviews. When I got my graduate degree, also did qualitative research. 6 major themes emerged. A long and difficult search for diagnosis and treatment. Hell yeah. Significant changes of physical function and bodily sensations. Yes. Disruption of their lives. Yes. Emotional distress. Yes. Loss of self-value. Hell yes. And how we develop our own survival strategies. I'm going to have to read this paper more in depth. So what was their conclusion? Interstitial cystitis profoundly affects women's physical, psychological, and social lives. The findings highlight the need for earlier and more accurate diagnosis, multimodal treatment approaches, integrated psychological support, and holistic nursing care to address the complex biopsychosocial needs of women with IC. Now, I don't know why they excluded men, because I'm going to tell you, men have exactly the same challenges that women do, if not more. Because at least with women, we have a lot more support than guys do. With women, we can call a girlfriend and we can go, man, I was up all night peeing. Or, man, sex really hurt. Your guys aren't going to do that with other guys. So men who struggle with pelvic pain often find themselves quite a bit more isolated than women. But that's a good study from Taiwan. So that's very interesting. Okay. Here is the latest Pentosan study, and this is in the journal Retina. The title is Characterization of Pentosan Polysulfate Maculopathy with Fluorescent Lifetime Imaging. Let's see where this study was done. This was done at UC San Diego. Wow. Bern, Switzerland. Yeah, that's good to see UC San Diego dive into this, because, they benefited from it. They played a critical role in the development of Pentosan polysulfate. This is where Dr. Lowell Parsons practiced. So this is the first time I've seen a maculopathy coming from that same institution. I kind of thought they were taking a bit of a hands-off approach. So let's see what they say. Long-term Pentosan use for IC has been associated with sight-threatening pigmentary maculopathy. The study evaluated fluorescent lifetime imaging, ophthalmoscopy in Pentosan patients, and correlated findings with other tests. 19 eyes from 10 patients and 19 eyes from normals were evaluated. I don't understand a lot of this. This is all retina, extreme retina science over my head. But the conclusion is FLIO, which is the fluorescent imaging, detected significant differences in fluorescence lifetimes between pentose polysulfate maculopathy and controls. Discrete, very short lifetime foci may represent early or distinct disease features. Now, let me tell you why that's important. Because if you look at the black box warning, they encourage patients to have their eyes checked before you start the medication, especially if you have any history or any risk of other eye issues. So what the researchers are really trying to do now is find the early warning signs. What are the earliest signs that some retinal damage might be beginning? This is one of those studies. So this is a very important, very good study. I love seeing that. This is good. Okay, evaluating IC information on TikTok. Oh my God. Why anybody would go to TikTok to learn about IC is, I don't get it. I mean, the last thing you need is a funny video about peeing all the time. That's not going to help you. You need a video that's going to help you understand why this happens, which is why we have our video masterclass on IC, which instead of 90-second videos are like 10-minute videos on how is it diagnosed, how is it treatment, what are our treatment options, what are our self-help tips, physical therapy, all that sort of stuff. But anyway, what do they say here? With more people turning to TikTok for health information, it is important to assess the quality of IC-related content on this platform, which has not been studied to date. So they did a cross-sectional content analysis to identify the top 100 most TikTok videos under 4 IC-related hashtags. They had 71,000 plays, 116 comments, 9 seconds in duration. Oh my God, what are you going to learn in 9 seconds? I mean, I'm happy that there's only 71,000 plays because I shudder to think of the damage some of these videos could do. Anyway, half were created by patients, half were created by healthcare workers. Most shared personal experiences with neutral or negative tones. More videos demonstrated distrust in healthcare than trust. 2/3 mentioned symptoms, nearly half mentioned treatments, but videos scored very poorly on accuracy. So they concluded they lack high quality and actionable information, and they want doctors to start creating their own videos on TikTok to improve the accuracy. I struggle with TikTok because the more videos I watch, the less I want to read. It's like your brain gets reprogrammed to not want to read stuff. And I want to read stuff. I was on TikTok for 3 months and I did about 100 TikTok videos on IC. And before that, I read at least 2-3 books a week. After that, I struggled to read for 15 minutes before my brain said, watch a video, watch a video, watch a video. And I legit haven't spent any time on TikTok since then. But I do get stuck in videos on YouTube and I struggle to read now. I mean, read recreationally with a book. My refuge was every night reading a fantasy book. And my brain doesn't want to do that. My brain wants to watch videos. And that's ultimately how that technology changes the way our brain processes information. And it's scary as heck, my friends. It's scary as heck. Chris says, I just went to a urologist. He said IC is fibrosis of the bladder muscle, so can't be reversed. He just prescribed Pentocin and asked me to take them when I have pain. Oh my God. That is so inaccurate. IC is not fibrosis of the bladder muscles. Not every patient has fibrosis. Hunner's lesions are a distinct patient group. They've got visible wounds on the bladder. Then you've got the estrogen atrophy patient. Then you've got the chemical injury patient, like the patients going through chemo. Then you've got the physical therapy pelvic floor patients. And then you've got 40% of patients have a central nervous system problem with the widespread pain. We're the patients who have IC, IBS, vulvodynia, TMJ, etc. So for him to say everybody has fibrosis of the bladder muscles is crazy. That is crazy and hell wrong. And then what they do, they prescribed you the medication that you can go blind with. And then they said only take them when you have pain? What? If you've got, it depends upon the type of pain you have. If you've got pelvic floor pain, taking a bladder med will do nothing. The medication, the correct medication is a muscle relaxant. That's just bonkers, Chris. Holy moly. Jurist says what is crazy is prescribing it. You're not the only one who feels that way. Did they even tell you the dangers, the risks, the associated risks of this? You just justified how I started this meeting. Like I have just got this. Last week was brutal because every single day I had phone calls from patients who were going blind and had bowel issues, and many who had had their bowels removed, colectomy. And it's just like, who is protecting you? I'm trying so hard to be that advocate, that consumer advocate. Somebody's got to fight for you because the urologists aren't fighting for you right now. They're oh my God. Marie says, thank you for all you do. I don't want to interrupt your interesting info today. I spoke to you about a year ago. Guys, the whole purpose of this meeting is to interrupt me. Please interrupt me. Ask me questions. I want lots and lots of questions. So anyway, so she had a Hunner's lesion that was treated. They found a cyst and they biopsied it, and you had mastocytosis. After that, you did installations, including hyaluronic acid, which was okay, but then you switched to the company policy favorite. Oh God, what was that? What was that? 6 weeks ago, I had a lot of pain in the evening, had one Thursday. I thought I was going to die. The pain was so severe. It was like birthing my 10-pound son with no meds. 10 French catheter was inserted, a solution of 15 cc's of lidocaine, 5 cc's of sodium bicarbonate, and 10,000 units of heparin was instilled into the bladder. That, my friends, is what we call a rescue installation. You obviously won't have it again, and you have a video appointment with your gynecologist Monday. What should I be asking her? Okay, so I think what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had the installation, and then after the installation, you had all this pain? Maria, tell me, because I can answer this in a bunch of different ways. So did the installation cause the pain, or did they do the installation because you were in that level of pain? Let me know. Kayleen says, I know someone on TikTok right now that's showing IC as some jokes. Yeah. You know, I am proudly the fairy grandmother or the fairy godmother of the IC movement online. I built the first online support website. I started the first urology support groups, worked with cancer patients, prostate patients, IC patients. I did all that back in the 90s, and I have a lot of strong opinions about what makes a good online support group and what makes a damaging online support group. Before social media, the IC network was the home for all things IC. We had 200,000 patients a month visiting our website. Incredible traffic. I had a team of 20 trained volunteers. And we did a kick-ass job. We had a great online support for many years. But then social media happened. And with social media, basically, you get to meet your friends, you get to meet your family. Facebook happened. And I was very slow to jump on Facebook. I waited 6 months because I had my hands full with our giant support forum. I just didn't know how I could possibly run support groups on Facebook. And so I didn't jump on it. Other people jumped on it and they started support groups, and that was fine. I decided I wasn't going to be angry about that or resentful of that. It's like there are millions of IC patients. The more support groups we have, the better. I am all for anybody starting groups as long as you're knowledgeable and informed. And I've helped many patients start groups, and I am here for support group leaders who face challenges. If you've got a suicidal patient, if you're dealing with people who are trying to manipulate, whatever, I am here for you. If you have questions, I can share you direct experience about how we dealt with that. The problem, though, is that social media is not a safe place in essence. And most of the groups, particularly on Facebook, have had moments of disgusting behavior. Patients yelling at patients, group leaders kicking people out who disagreed with their theory. And there's just so much infighting in online support groups that too many patients just walked away. And I was one of them. I was just like, listen, I'm not interested in fighting with anybody. Let's just get back to the basics. Now we have a lot more social media platforms, right? And then TikTok emerged, and somebody said, hey, Jill, you better go check out TikTok. There are a couple of people saying really bad things about IC over there. We need your voice over there. And I was like, oh God, now another social media platform I've got to learn. So I went over there, and the model for TikTok basically is, you make it funny. And I was talking with one of my advisors, and they said, that's not you. If you try to make it funny, you're going to lose all your credibility. You cannot go over there and make funny videos. You need to let other people make funny videos. People come to you because they want good information. And so I have stayed off of TikTok for that reason. But Stacy, who works for me, has been doing more IC stuff over there. And I have a bunch of videos over there that I filmed. And I guess I might need to do more, but I don't know. I just want to make things right now. I want to make more resources. I got lots of ideas going through this head. Marie says, I lost you. Okay, so Marie, the question was, did that severe pain happen after you had that installation? Or did you have the installation as a rescue because you were in severe pain? I just need to know before or after. I have a very strong suspect. If you developed the pain after you had that installation, let me know because we can talk about that. One, Evelyn, her name is Evelyn, was Evelyn White. She's since passed away. Evelyn was my first co-leader of my first support group, IC Redwood Empire. And this happened to her, Marie. And Evelyn was about as calm as you could have ever met. She was such a lovely, kind, but strong woman. And so she had been doing a series of installations. They taught her how to do it, rescue installation, exact same formula that you prescribed, that you wrote, which is the lidocaine, a little tiny bit of bicarbonate, and the units. And then literally She got a new round of installations from the pharmacy, and the exact same thing happened to her. She put it in. Shortly thereafter, she was almost screaming in pain. It's like, wait a second. I've been doing this for a year. I've never had a pain from this installation. It was mismade. And specifically, if I remember correctly, instead of using a very neutral, we call it deionized water, they used a sodium solution. And salt on a wound is very, very painful. And so she did, so here she's at home in agony, just like you were. And she immediately calls the doctor, and they realized that it had been mismade. And that's actually something that we have seen in several doctors' offices. It would be nice if a rescue installation was pre-made with the exact proportions. But there's only one company, who's maybe two, that's actually trying to market that, but it's like $70-$80 a treatment. Doctors, especially the top doctors, like to create their own formula. And so some doctors are going to do heparin to coat the bladder, or sodium hyaluronate to coat the bladder. They're going to put either lidocaine or marcaine in there. They're going to do a little tiny bit of sodium bicarb. They're probably going to do a little bit of a steroid. They might even put a little bit of an antibiotic in there. And so I've got a bunch of formulas that have been published in research studies on our main website, so you can kind of see the other formulas. So then the doctor is kind of playing mad scientist, but they're not mad. I mean, it's a real legit treatment. That's the most popular bladder installation out there. The problem goes when they ask a nurse or a PA to make it, because they may not have the chemistry training. They may mistake dilutions easily. And then the other thing too, Marie, is that so you had, what did you have in here? Let me look at it again. Some patients can have a really extreme reaction to lidocaine, and lidocaine can cause terrific pain. A small percentage of patients might struggle with a lidocaine sensitivity, and if that happens, the doctor will normally switch you over to marcaine, because marcaine does not know, the importance of the canes is they turn nerves off. They're numbing, and the hardest part of IC is that we've got nerves that have become very, very sensitive in the bladder if you're in that phenotype. And calming irritated nerves down is very difficult. So one of the ways that they can do that is you just silence the nerve consistently. So what a rescue installation does is it coats the bladder, and then it has lidocaine in it to just turn the nerves off. And it'll only last for a couple of hours, but I don't know if downregulating is exactly the right word, but it's just turning that nerve off for a period of time. And kind of the operational theory here is that the more you do that, the more the nerves will calm. And so kind of calming over time. A rescue installation is the perfect example of what I call managing the symptoms of IC. Rescue installations are ideal for patients who are bladder wall centric. They're going to be the most ideal for patients with estrogen atrophy, with chemocystitis. They might help a little bit with Hunner's lesions, but they're not in the long run going to repair anything. It's kind of like putting a lidocaine gel on a mosquito bite. You're temporarily calming things, you're definitely coating things. And again, it's all about just trying to get the symptoms under control. And our job, of course, is to try to step past that and try to focus on underlying causation. What is happening in your pelvis, which is driving these symptoms in the first place? Could you have a lesion on your bladder wall? If you do, then we want to treat the lesion. Do you have very tight pelvic floor muscles that are squeezing the nerves, depriving blood flow to the nerves, depriving blood flow to the bladder? Then we want to treat that. If you are a widespread pain patient, then we have to focus on calming your entire nervous system, not just the nerves in your bladder wall. So just kind of for context there. So a rescue installation is not a bad therapy. It's like the single most popular bladder installation out there. That said, the fact that you had really severe pain after a rescue installation, after having, I'm assuming you had others where it didn't hurt. What that says is that something may have changed in the formula. And that's where we just kind of need to know who made it. Did a PA make it? Did the doctor make it? Did they change anything and not tell you about it, et cetera, et cetera? Marie says, I'm a special rare person, so maybe the lidocaine, though I can use the lidocaine patch. I don't know, hun. I mean, for Evelyn, it was that they put sodium in her installation, that somebody at the pharmacy who created it for her just didn't read the formula correctly. Instead of using DI water, they used a salt solution. Once they switched it back to DI water, she was fine. But that's not normal. Normally, after a rescue installation, you feel much better temporarily. Joanne says, my doctor has offered a choice between Botox injections into the bladder or tibial nerve stimulation to help my overactive bladder incontinence. How risky are these? I'm so overwhelmed and tired this year after year. Oral meds I've tried were causing side effects or were ineffective. Joanne, so we kind of need to know what your phenotype is, right? So if nobody's ever talked to you about a phenotype is a patient group. So if you were to come to an in-person support group meeting, if we still had them, and I want to start them again legitimately, you would see how incredibly different we are. That for some people, IC begins in childhood, while for others, it begins after menopause. For some people, IC begins while they're going through chemotherapy because the chemicals of the chemo damage their bladder, while for others, IC begins after falling on their tailbone and hurting something, and that was me. And so interstitial cystitis by its very nature is what we call a grab bag diagnosis. It means you have frequency urgency pain, but they don't necessarily know why. So they're just saying, hey, you've got interstitial cystitis, this incurable bladder disease. But we don't think of this, and major researchers no longer consider this an incurable bladder disease. We consider this a pelvic pain syndrome for which there are many potential causes. Our job is to try to identify underlying cause. And that means we have to try to figure out what phenotype you're in. If, for example, I can see your picture, so I can see that you are a little bit more mature, we're probably near the same age. If your symptoms began after the age of 50 or after a total hysterectomy, or if you were on Lupron, the very first thing we're going to suspect is actually estrogen atrophy. So think about your bladder for a moment. It's the only organ in the human body designed to hold toxic waste, right? Because urine is body waste. Urine contains ammonia and urea and all sorts of bad things. So how can the bladder hold ammonia for hours at a time and not get damaged? It's a real evolutionary marvel, because the way the bladder protects itself is with a really thick coating of mucus. So your bladder is like your mouth. It's a hollow organ that's wet and slippery on the inside. And that mucus is a thick, robust barrier that pushes urine and the irritants in urine away from the cells of your bladder wall. Unfortunately, mucus production is estrogen dependent. So what that means is when you're young and have a lot of estrogen, your bladder can make a lot of mucus. But once you hit a certain age, or again, even if you're on birth control, some stronger birth controls, if you've had a total hysterectomy or you're just getting older, you don't have the estrogen anymore, which means you don't have as much mucus anymore because your bladder can't make it. It needs the estrogen to make the mucus. So your bladder wall is now vulnerable, and it's going to be immediately vulnerable to urine and to irritants in urine, which is why that cup of coffee you might have been able to drink every day in your 40s, all of a sudden in your 50s or older, it keeps you up at night. That's just because your bladder is older and it cannot defend itself. So if you were in this group, therapeutically, our job is to help the bladder make mucus. And we do that with estrogen. We want to give, if we can give that skin some estrogen, it will immediately plump up and start to make mucus again. So treatment number one is always going to be estrogen. And the odds are your doctor may have already given you some estrogen to use. There are many women out there who don't understand its importance. They don't use it, or they use it once, it burns, and they're like, I'm not doing that. It burned. If using an estrogen cream burns, that means your skin is very dry, but that will go away. You have to just get through that for the first couple of weeks. The more you give this skin estrogen, the plumper it gets. Our second goal for that estrogen atrophy patient is to give your bladder some protection. And that's where Elmiron would have shined. If it weren't associated with potentially going blind or losing your bowel, that the use of Elmiron makes sense in that context. But we don't have that now. As you know, well, it's available. The question is, are you willing to assume the risk? What we do have is chondroitin. And so most of those patients have transitioned over to a chondroitin-based supplement that will coat the bladder. Bladder Builder, Bladder Rest, Cystoprotect. Those are going to be, Cystomend are going to be the top kind of coatings. What Botox is going to do is temporarily silence the nerve in your bladder wall. It doesn't fix anything. It is what I call chasing the symptoms. The fundamental challenge with Botox is that if they accidentally numb the nerve which controls your ability to urinate, you're going to have to self-catheterize for a period of time. And that sucks. And you have to be able to self-catheterize. They're not supposed to give this with somebody who's elderly or somebody who doesn't have good use of their hands, because you might need to catheterize after that. It's a rare complication, but it is a very, very well-known complication. Now, the ankle stimulation, tibial nerve stimulation, is something I personally have done. Its approach is, it's assuming that the problem is not with the bladder wall. The problem is with the nervous system, that the nervous system has become dysregulated in some way. So the theory behind neuromodulation is to deliver a series of gentle electronic pulses to the nerves to control the bladder, to try to help them learn how to be normal again. This was first done with a medical device called InterStim. InterStim requires surgery. They do it in the lower back around the sacrum. I was a support group leader there, and I was a patient at UC San Francisco. I saw it all, my friend. I saw it all. I was very thankful that I ended up in the office of the guy who invented tibial nerve stimulation, Dr. Marshall Stoller. And in fact, I did tibial nerve stimulation, and I still have the tattoos. Let's see. Let me see if I can find one. Hold on a sec. Yeah. See that black tattoo right there? It's 4 fingers above the ankle bone and 1 finger below center point. At week 3, I had my first 2 hours without pain. At week 7, I had my first day without pain. And so if you're going to consider neuromodulation, that's a great place to start because it does not require surgery and it's much more affordable than interstone, anything at all like that. The research is kind of shaky. The role of neuromodulation has gotten very, very small now that we're phenotyping. And so we're really looking at it primarily for incontinence. I was working with a patient last week who had total bladder and bowel incontinence. And she had a very bad nerve injury. And and she did the trial, and the trial eased her incontinence, didn't stop it, but it eased it. And she called me and she wanted to know what I thought about it. And so we went in depth about neuromodulation. And I encouraged her to learn a lot more about it because that's where, if you're incontinent, neuromodulation really might help tremendously. And so if I had to pick between the Botox and the neuromodulation, I do the neuromodulation because it's really easy to do and it doesn't hurt. You just go to the doctor once a week for 10 weeks. They stick a little acupuncture needle above your ankle, attach a little TENS unit to it. You do it for 30 minutes and then you're done. It should never hurt. If they turn it on and it hurts, you turn it down. More is not better. If it's hurting, it's damaging. So they will put the needle in first, and then they'll attach a lead to it, and then they'll slowly turn the TENS unit on. And what they're doing is they're looking for the big toe to bend down. If the big toe bends down, you are on the nerve, perfect position. Because nerves are hard to find. We know generally where they are. So if your big toe bends down like this, perfect position. Or if your other toes kind of splay forward, that's also considered a perfect position. So they're going to turn it on, see what the toes do, and then they turn it down because it should never hurt. If it's hurting, that's not good because you're potentially damaging the nerve. And so I'm really glad I did it. Do I think that over the long run it changed me? Probably not. Because after that, I learned that I was pelvic floor driven, that I'm in the pelvic floor phenotype, and physical therapy is what changed my life. It helped a little bit. It wasn't a big change, but if I had to pick, I do the ankle stim first, just because it's easy and less risky. Johanna says, how are you? I had an MRI. Doctor said I don't have endo, but I do have a small fibroid. She said this won't be causing any of the issues. Well, Johanna, it's really good that you have that test. It's important because if sometimes fibroid tumors, if they're on the front side of the uterus, can push on the bladder and cause some of these symptoms. I feel like I want to say that sometimes doctors kind of dismiss the fibroid, I'm going to say this the right way. If you've never had a fibroid, you don't know what it feels like. You just don't. And if you talk to somebody who's had fibroids, they can often describe the sensation of it and the discomfort of it that doctors sometimes dismiss. So I guess what I would say to you is just monitor that fibroid over time. I mean, 2 centimeters, come on, that's real small. That's like that big. So it's not like a grapefruit fibroid pushing on your bladder. That's good. I'm going to agree. That's a very, very small fibroid. But still, it's good that you know it's there. It's good that you can monitor it because sometimes they can grow. Marie says, I doubt your doctor would admit to an error in the bladder installation. You got that right. Hey, Diane. Diane, I saw you wrote a message, but then you retracted it. Go ahead. Ask your question. Anne says, I learned so much from you. Thank you. Joanne says, thank you, Jill. Very helpful. Always happy to help. So Joanne, did I guess right? Did your symptoms start as you got a little bit on the older side? I would really, for some people, just using that topical estrogen is enough. But for other women, it's not. I mean, you're never going to have a 20-year-old bladder again. You have a 50 or 60-year-old bladder that's being helped a little bit with estrogen, but it's still profoundly different and lower in estrogen levels. And that's where doing a chondroitin supplement might be helpful. I kind of I think sometimes we make this way too complex and it gets too confusing. Oh, I have this disease. I've got this bladder disease. I've got to do this treatment and I've got to do that treatment because I'm in pain. How do I pick? What should I do? And in the end, it's actually kind of a simple algorithm because the pain is either coming from the organ, the muscles, or the nerves. And so when you're working with your doctor, you get to say, okay, is my bladder wall healthy? Is my skin healthy? I mean, listen, if your vulva is dry and your vagina is dry, so is your urethra and so is your bladder. So is my skin healthy? If not, what can we do to improve that? And that's where the estrogen is important. And that's where starting with the supplements might be important. And if that skin remains dry on the inside, if that urothelium now has dry points to it where urine can reach these cells, see? So if we lose our mucosal barrier here and urine is now penetrating down here, I mean, that's a real problem. That skin, that mucous membrane is normally protected. So we have to figure out how we're going to protect that skin. So starting with the supplements, if you can't tolerate the supplements and you choose not to do Elmiron, then you're in a pickle because the nerves are just exposed. I mean, you're just here. The urine is provoking this. So your number one defense is going to be food because you don't have the protective coating anymore. So diet management is going to be critical for these patients because if you pour acid on the wound every day, it's going to stay irritated. And I was at an NIH conference on IC years ago, and the Dr. Anthony Schaefer, who was teaching it, very, very well-known urologist. It was a seminar on complex UTIs, and he just said he was explaining how the bladder heals. These are the largest these are the largest single cells in the human body, right? So think extra large pizza. Underneath that extra large pizza is a single green pea, like a little tiny stem cell. And it takes 2 weeks for a stem cell to grow and adapt and fill in a cell that has been damaged. And he explained that the bladder is the slowest healing organ in the body because these cells are so large. And more importantly, the stem cells that are trying to repair any damage are exquisitely vulnerable to acid. That literally 1 cup of coffee destroys an entire generation of cells trying to repair your bladder. And so if you're doing 1 cup of coffee a day because you're not going to let this disease rob you of something you enjoy, your bladder will never be able to repair itself because you are literally stripping the new cells away. And he said that, he's like, yeah, one cup of coffee will do that. All the patient organizations that were there back then, it was me and it was Anthony Walker from the United Kingdom and Jane Malink from the Netherlands and Sandy McNichol from Canada. I think all four of us were there. And we all looked at each other and went, yeah, hell, we knew that. The patients who suffer the most by far are the patients who are stuck with this injured bladder wall and they're drinking coffee every day. That is why diet modification is so incredibly important for that bladder wall phenotype. Because your job is to create an environment that will help your bladder repair itself. And that means you gotta lose the irritating foods for a good 3 to 6 months. And there was a new study that came out a couple weeks ago that actually talked about how long it takes in total for the bladder to repair itself after big injuries. They were saying 6 months. So the diet isn't necessarily for the rest of your life, but if you want your bladder to repair itself, it's in your best interest to follow this diet for a period of time. Now, the patients who are going to struggle the most with diet by far are the patients who have wounds in their bladder, Hunner's lesion. Because getting those wounds to heal is very difficult because those patients don't respond to typical bladder wall therapies. The way we seal those wounds is with a fulguration, a laser therapy, cauterize those wounds. They can inject a steroid into those wounds. And now we know why these wounds are so difficult and why they come back, because for many of you, they're a viral infection. Epstein-Barr, Epstein-Barr infection. If you have had a history of mononucleosis, that mononucleosis virus, that Epstein-Barr virus, can infect your bladder wall and cause these lesions. We had a patient like 3 months ago, an older woman who suddenly developed lesions. In fact, I was just working with one on Friday who also suddenly developed lesions. And she went and had a mono test and she had a raging case of mononucleosis. Raging that she had been exposed to from a grandkid. So it is what it is. All right, here, hold on a second. Kayleen said, I had incontinence right after the bladder installation. There would be a small gush every time I made a sudden move. This has never happened before. Here, hold on. Wait. What did I miss here? Hi, Chloe. If I didn't say hi already. Kayleen said, I had incontinence right after the bladder installation. There would be a small gush every time I made a sudden move. This has never happened before. You had a clitoral adhesiolysis on Monday, and she put on the vaginal estrogen. Would the estrogen have anything to do with the incontinence? I don't think so. I don't see any connection between the estrogen and the incontinence, other than if you don't have enough estrogen, your muscles get very weak. Muscles get weak, skin gets poor, and long-term avoidance of estrogen could potentially lead to incontinence. But would putting topical estrogen on your vulva cause incontinence? No, I don't think so. But I have to, okay. So I have only had a couple of episodes of incontinence myself, and I am 65. I can remember as a kid, we were riding rubber tires down a snowbank and I peed my pants and I had to drive home with wet underwear. That was annoying. Stress incontinence. If I get startled, if I, and especially now that I'm older, if I laugh really hard, I will feel like a drop is starting to come out, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it did come all the way out. My underwear is normally fine. It didn't come all the way through, but you feel things kind of starting to move. But when I was recovering from my mastectomy and my whole body was massively inflamed, I leaked a couple times. Like literally standing in my bathroom, woo, it just came out. Where'd that come from? And I associate that with like just really extreme neuroinflammation. Because it happened again when I had the superflu in December. I can remember I was just like standing in my bathroom and whoop, just started to appear, and I sat down on the toilet really quick. So I have to wonder if the adhesiolysis that you went through combined, because adhesiolysis is, so guys, we do adhesiolysis when skin sticks to each other. They have to separate the skin. And it's not the funnest thing in the world to go through, and it can be very stressful to go through because it's down on a very tender part of our body. So maybe it was associated with that a little bit more. That would be my guess. That would be my guess. All right. By the way, we have our first big fire warning today, heavy winds, and we were warned that they might turn our power off tonight or tomorrow. So wish us luck. I'm looking at the trees out there, and they're starting to blow. Joanne said, yes, it did. Estradiol started a year ago. Hysterectomy 35 years ago. You're 72. Right. So you didn't just go, I mean, if it was a total hysterectomy, Joanne, you went into menopause 35 years ago. And if you hadn't used estrogen in 33 years, girl, you were in severe estrogen atrophy. Severe estrogen atrophy. So I'm really glad you started the estradiol. That's a really cool thing about this skin is it responds beautifully to topical estrogen. The challenge is, you know, you're just never going to have a young bladder again. And so you really might benefit from this one right now. Bladder Builder has the best reviews in our store and on Amazon in the IC patient population. Bladder Builder. It's definitely our favorite. And by the way, I've got a new lactoferrin that if it's not here already, it'll be here Monday or Tuesday. That's about half the price of the lactoferrin we currently have. So I'm very happy about that. Lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum, and the IC study that was done 2 years ago, red inflamed bladders became pink and healthy, and Hunner's lesions virtually healed. And so quite a few patients with Hunner's lesions, and even those without, have been using lactoferrin. The problem is the imported lactoferrin from Australia is $74 a bottle, which is very expensive. So I'm bringing this company that makes Bladder Builder is now making their lactoferrin. And so we're going to sell their lactoferrin too. It will be in very, very soon. Terry said, I took Elmiron for 17 years, developed macro degeneration. Last year, I had a colon resection due to a flat polyp. I had no idea Elmiron could cause that. I switched over to Desert Harvest 6 years ago. Do you recommend Cystomend as well as aloe? I don't recommend aloe anymore because there isn't a single research study showing aloe is helpful for IC over the long run. And in fact, let me just check. I'm in the National Library of Medicine right now. Let me just go over there. I'm going to search for aloe interstitial cystitis. And let's see if anything's been published. Nope, nothing. Aloe became popular 30 years ago because it was really the second supplement ever made. The first supplement that was made was Pre-Leaf, and Pre-Leaf reduces acid in food. Pre-Leaf is very, very popular. It's been around for 40 years, and it has a very specific job, and that is to take the acid out of food. aloe, when you put aloe on a sunburn, it's soothing. So aloe has the potential of being soothing to the bladder wall, but I do not believe that it fixes anything over the long run. And now that we're phenotyping, we understand underlying causation a little bit more. I only recommend aloe for bladder wall flares and only for a couple of days. I don't see any value to taking it over the long run anymore. What I can give you instead is a research study showing that a chondroitin supplement, Cystra Protect, that with 252 patients who experienced a significant reduction in their symptoms when they took it for 6 months. So if I have to choose between aloe and chondroitin, I'm always going to go for the chondroitin. And in my experience, the chondroitin has been far more helpful than the aloe has been, at least with our customers. So Cystomend is what I call the kitchen sink approach to a supplement. They just have a lot of different ingredients in it, but it's not as well targeted as Bladder Builder. I think what makes Bladder Builder better is it's got chondroitin for the bladder wall. It's got quercetin to reduce mast cell activity, but it has PEA in it to calm nerves down. And it's the only, it was the first chondroitin supplement to contain PEA. And we did our 1-year follow-up study, and 60% of patients who were using Bladder Builder reported fewer flares, less painful flares, and some were now pain-free from the addition of PEA. PEA, also known as palmitoyl ethanolamide. So when we're thinking our phenotypes here, again, it depends upon what your phenotype is. If you're Hunner's lesions and you want to go for a supplement, the only supplement that has shown any published results with Hunner's lesions is lactoferrin. And again, lactoferrin is a protein found in colostrum. Our body makes lactoferrin. We have it in our tears. We have it in our vaginal fluid. Our ability to make our own lactoferrin diminishes as we get older. So they've been using lactoferrin from cows for many years for adult diseases. The IC lactoferrin study, which was published a week after I had my double mastectomy, a little less than 2 years ago, was stunningly successful. It was a small study, but 28 out of 31 patients were pain-free. Red inflamed bladders became pink and healthy, and Hunner's lesions were virtually gone. If you were a bladder wall estrogen atrophy patient or chemocystitis patient, then the ingredient that we're looking for really is going to be chondroitin to kind of protect the bladder and to give the bladder time to calm down. And so most of those Elmiron patients have switched over to this or Cystra Protect or Bladder Rest. If you are a pelvic floor patient, then bladder therapies are pointless because you're a pelvic floor patient. You need to put your money into physical therapy. If you are a nerve patient, if let's say you're struggling with pain, then we're going to go to PEA, palmitoyl ethanolamide, where I can give you dozens of research studies showing it reduces pain, surgical pain, chronic pain, acute pain, IC pain, pelvic pain, chronic prostatitis pain, shingles pain, fibromyalgia, you name it, they've studied it. PEA is absolutely the future of supplementation in the IC and pelvic pain world. It is what I take every day. It acts by calming nerves down. It is not an opiate medication. There's no sign of addiction, and the side effect profile is outstanding. There's a blog on the IC Network website where you can read all the research yourself. Right on the front, there's also a blog on lactoferrin where you can go look at the researchers for that. So again, Terry, we kind of need to know what your phenotype is. Kayleen said, do you think he maybe filled my bladder up too much? No, I doubt it. Unless, I mean, I don't think that they would do a hydrodistension, would they? Joanna said, would I recommend having the fibroid removed? No. It's small. But if you always have pain in the same location in your body and the fibroid tumor happens to be at that location, that might be a discussion with your doctor. But remember, I can't give you medical advice. My job is to educate you and send you back to the doctor. So, I again, what I always say to patients is, listen, if you always have pain in one specific location, like it's always right here at this spot, and you'd be amazed at the number of patients who do have pain, like on the left side, right at this spot, then we have to understand what's physically and anatomically at that location. What's there that could be causing that pain? Is it a Hunner's lesion? Is it a fibroid tumor? Is it an ovarian cyst? Is there something growing there that's not supposed to be growing there? I think it's so if you're tracking pain in one specific location over and over and over again, I would ask the doctor if that's where the fibroid tumor is. Because if it is, fibroid tumors might be near a nerve. It's hard to say. What I can tell you is we have research showing that women with fibroid tumors often struggle with the symptoms of IC, frequency, urgency, pressure, pain. And there's similar research that shows that when you remove the fibroid, the symptoms improve dramatically. But again, it's a tiny fibroid. I'm really thinking more grapefruit size, orange size, apple size as being really problematic. Kayleen says, I didn't take diazepam for the adhesiolysis, which made me shake. I will never go without diazepam again. She pulled out some buildup. Oh, yeah. Your body is so confusing since you started the vaginal estrogen and you hate it. Well, Kayleen, honey, and I know you won't mind me saying this because you're in our meetings all the time. You have, I think about you a lot. I genuinely do, because for a woman of a young age, you have suffered horrifically. And like I said when I started this meeting, I am sick of patients who are being discounted and ignored. And you certainly fall into that category. You have had such a difficult time getting doctors to believe you, and so now we have doctors that have found problems like what's going on and the fact that you need the adhesiolysis. So that's a tremendous blessing. The challenge, though, is why is that happening? Skin sticks to each other when it gets really dry. And so the estrogen improves that. The estrogen gets that skin making mucus again. And I suspect that it would help over the long run in preventing those adhesions or that adhesive skin. And I know you don't like it, but there's a fundamental problem there that we have to try to figure out, and that is, why is your skin so compromised? If you're on birth control, that reduces estrogen levels. So I'm so sorry that you have the struggles that you have had. And it's not fair. And I see a lot of me in you. I legit do. I really, really do. And you know that. And I think about how depressed I was and confused and frustrated. And then little comments from family members and friends, and that one friend who said, Jill, you need therapy. I just think you like being in pain. And I'm like, what? I didn't like being in pain at all. I couldn't sleep. I was in so much pain. And to think that somebody judged me in that way was just, obviously, we are not friends anymore. It's horrific. And I think you have faced many of those same struggles, my dear. You really, really have. And I just applaud you for being persistent, for standing up in the face of great pain, for advocating for yourself, for having the patience with family members and friends who don't get it. You're a tough bitch. And I say that with affection. That is a title I'm proud to wear because I am a tough bitch too. And the last 3 years have proved it for me. And man, we're still here. We're still here fighting. Now, granted, we have to take time and take care of ourselves, and that's easier said than done. We have to look at the things that are working and not working in our lives. I'm cutting a lot of things. I am learning to let go of a lot of things. I don't game at all anymore, honey. Really, I don't. I just want to make things. I want to write. I want to do things. I want to be productive. Once you face cancer and you have those moments when you think you're going to be dead, you realize all the lost opportunities. And I don't want to lose those opportunities anymore. I have a lot of ideas I want to pursue, and I'm just freaking going for it. Terry says, how often should we use estradiol cream? Honey, it depends upon how bad your skin is. The industry standard is 2 to 3 times a week. But in women with really severe estrogen atrophy, they might have you do it every day for 2 weeks and then go back down to 2 to 3 times a week. So it's really the doctor who examines your vulva who tells you how often it should be done. I will confess that I only use mine once a week. Now, they just removed the black box warning on all estrogen products. We now know that the estrogen fear-mongering was based on somebody grossly misinterpreting research data. But if you have a history of estrogen-driven cancer, like I do, it is a discussion you have to have with your doctor. And I had a total hysterectomy because I had precancer, and then I had actual cancer in my breast, and those were so incredibly traumatic and life-changing for me that I am just choosing to do it once a week, and I focus primarily on my vulva and my urethra. I'm not in a sexual relationship right now, and so I'm not really worried about vaginal lubrication, if you know what I mean. Kayleen said she was shocked that there was so much cream. I really should be on vaginal estrogen, but it's not working out for me. Yeah. Well, we've talked about this, girl. We've talked about this many times. And that is, we all have to get comfortable with our body. We all have to learn how to do intimate things. And the challenge is that society doesn't make that normal. You'd be amazed at the number of women that I have worked with who have never looked at their own vulva. It's like, just get a mirror, put it on pull out. I have drawers in my bathroom. I pull out a lower drawer, I put a mirror on it, and I squat over it and I look. You have to know what your body is supposed to look like. And you have to learn your own anatomy, and it's okay to touch it. It's okay to learn it. A healthy muscle feels like a raw chicken breast. It's soft, but it has substance. Good mucosal layer is slippery. It's okay to touch these things. And when you're struggling with something like what you're struggling with, you using that water bottle every single day to just comfort that skin and rinse that skin off is just vital. Oh, that's funny. Angie said, I'm so stressed, in so much pain. I was doing so good the last few years. I had my IC pelvic floor figured out. My flares under control. In March, they found fibrosis in my lungs. Yikes. In April, I was referred to the Cleveland Clinic. Yikes. 7-hour car ride there and back. Hello, pelvic floor, stress, anxiety, depression. My final diagnosis is idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis and emphysema. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Big hug. Man, life is so freaking unpredictable. Not in treatment yet. No idea what's next. Have a video appointment with my doctor to go over biopsy results. It's a lot. My body isn't handling it well, especially my pelvic floor. Yeah, honey, the car drives. Between the stress and the car rides, of course, your pelvic floor is flaring. There's this kind of myth that once you've had pelvic floor physical therapy, you're done. But the pelvic floor muscles are very dynamic and responsive muscle group in the human body, and they're very, very important in the stress response. They're literally one of the first muscle groups that get tight when you're under intense stress, because these are the muscles that are designed to, hold organs in place. They're the muscles that help you move your body, the muscles that help you run and all that sort of stuff. So they're a vital part of the fight or flight response. But they can get injured again. They can get locked down again. So the stress made your muscles tighter, and then it's the 7-hour car rides that have you. So, Angie, I hope you have a wand. I would be using my wand every day. And muscle relaxants. If you're driving yourself, baclofen, because that's non-sedating. But if you're a passenger, then you can do Flexeril. Flexeril is a little sedating. I don't go on any trip without pre-medicating with Flexeril. I take it an hour before I leave the house. I take a quarter of a pill every 2 hours for the duration of the trip. And so, if I'm flying across the country, now granted, I haven't done this since before COVID, that's only one pill in, 6 or 8 hours. And having that little bit of muscle relaxant on board always helps my pelvic floor calm down a little bit. So I would, and then also too, girl, hold on a sec. Hold on. Let me go get something to demonstrate. Hold on. All right. Let me introduce you to my other favorite travel tip. Hello, body heat heating pads. These are fantastic and they're really cheap. It's like $4 for 3. So let me demonstrate this. Body heat heating pads are the bomb, my friend. They're so good. So here, hold on a sec. Let me open this up. Oops, I didn't. So they come in 3-packs, but we also sell them. We'll sell 30. I think we sell 30 for, I don't know, like $36, something like that. Okay. Body heat heating pad. Look at how thin it is. Super, super thin. So you open it, take it out, and look at that, right? Super, super thin. And then when you take off the back, that activates it. This sucker will give you heat for 8 to 10 hours. Just, you don't put it on your skin. You put it on your cotton underwear or on your pants. So here, hold on a sec. Okay, so ideally, you could put it right here. So you could just put it along the inside. Bam. Heating pad exactly where you need it, and nobody knows it's there. Takes about an hour to warm up, but once it's up, it's good. Now, each batch is a little different. Some get hotter faster. Some get hotter slower. Some are more intense. So some are a little bit less intense. That's just manufacturing standards. I always wear, I made the mistake. In fact, I have a picture. Oh, where is it? Here, hold on. Okay, so this was me with Dr. Marshall Stoller, the guy who invented the ankle stem. And we flew to London, and I was his test subject as he demonstrated the ankle stem on the BBC and to various doctors over in the United Kingdom. So yeah, that's the 33-year-old Jill Osborne or 34-year-old Jill Osborne. Okay. I was still, I was better, but traveling still kicked my ass. And so on that plane flight from San Francisco to London, which is a 10-hour plane flight, I brought a microwavable heating pad thinking, okay, if I get in trouble, they can just heat it up in their microwave. You know what? There are no microwaves on on planes. None. I mean, I got up and I was just obviously in a ton of pain on the plane, and I asked her if she could heat up my heating pad, and she explained that. And then what she did is she put a bunch of really hot towelettes in a plastic bag and gave that to me. Praise God, that helped so much. But now you don't have to do that because these body heat heating pads are fantastic, guys. And they're cheap. I mean, I have sold these in the IC Network shop for 25 years. I have only raised the price once in 25 years. I think some people they're charging like $5 or $6 for one. You can get 3 for $3.99 from the IC Network. And some days I wear 3 at a time because I wear them. I have scoliosis, so I wear them up the left side of my back because that's where my curve is. And every now and then my curve decide, my muscles in my back decide they're going to be tight and uncomfortable. Okay. Angie says, yeah. Uh-oh. There we go. Angie said pudendal nerve block and a dry needling session next week. That sounds good. You have a 20 pack of heating pads as well. I know what to do. It's just so bad right now. Well, that's where having a little bit of opiate medication really helps. I mean, now that I know that I'm pelvic floor driven, and now that I know that all those horrific flares that I had when I was younger, they were never from my bladder wall. They were absolutely from pelvic floor. My bladder always looked perfect whenever they looked at it, despite the fact that it was sobbing in pain and peeing every 15 minutes. And that was all because my pelvic floor and nerves had been damaged from me falling and breaking my tailbone. And so, the heating pads and the physical therapy are just the priority always for patients who are in the pelvic floor group. And your obturator internus muscle is really bad. It's so hard to get to it. Yeah, it is. Johanna says, something else, Jill, pelvic pain naltrexone for pain. What do I think of that? I don't have any personal experience with naltrexone. I know that, let me look up the pharmacology of that. Oh, I can't believe I was that young. It's so weird. This is outside of the Royal Academy of England, the medical group. All right, so hold on. Let me just look at naltrexone again. Let's just see if there's any new research with it. Hold on one sec. It's only 4 studies, none with IC. Low-dose naltrexone for the treatment of burning mouth syndrome, published in 23. Low-dose naltrexone in the management of chronic pain conditions. And here's one study with IC from 1994. Holy crap. Wow. Who did that? Mount Sinai School of Medicine in New York. Nalmefene is a new narcotic antagonist similar to naloxone and naltrexone. Oh, so that's not even a naltrexone study. It's a long-acting oral agent that is a pure opiate antagonist without agonistic. Well, and so what they say is we need phase 3 randomized trials, but they were never done. So I don't know what to tell you, hun. Let me just do naltrexone pain. Let's see how many papers are. Wow, 1,800 papers on pain. All right, low-dose naltrexone. What is the evidence? A narrative review. Okay, here, hold on. Naltrexone is prescribed off-label at low doses, typically 0.5 to 6 milligrams for a variety of therapeutic indications. This review evaluates the clinical evidence for low-dose naltrexone. Literature search was conducted in February 2026. They found 105 studies were reviewed, including 15 randomized controlled trials for chronic pain, autoimmune neuro disorders, GI disease, dermatologic conditions, post-infectious syndromes, mental health, and oncology. Across these fields, early positive findings from uncontrolled studies were rarely replicated in placebo-controlled studies. Most available evidence consists of case reports and small feasibility studies that are prone to publication bias. It's generally safe, inexpensive, and well tolerated, with most studies using a daily dose of 4.5 milligrams. Although these features contribute to its appeal, current evidence does not support routine therapeutic use. Low-dose naltrexone may have a pragmatic role in the treatment-resistant cases where standard therapies have failed, provided its experimental status and uncertain efficacy are clearly explained. Larger, well-designed trials are needed. Okay, and this was done at, Australia. University of Queensland, Australia. So I'm going to give you this link. Johanna said something else, Jill, the pelvic pain. Oh, okay. So we answered that one. Thank you, Angie. Okay, guys, I need to go to the bathroom. So it's time for a bio break. 30 seconds. When you come back, you have to rate your ability to release urine. Okay? Because that tells us if your muscles are tight or not. So I want you to count a couple of seconds and let's see how quickly you can let it fly. I'll be right back. Okay. My pelvic floor is in good shape. I could let it go. If your muscles are tight, it's hard to relax enough to release urine. If you can sit on the toilet and go within a second or two, that's good. I was able to go quickly. I wouldn't say my flow was strong, but it was thorough. Joy. Isn't it great that we can talk about this stuff? It's okay. We can talk about this stuff. When I was young, I would never have wanted to talk about peeing and pooping publicly. And now it's like, yeah, I'm 65. It's no big deal. Lots of people have issues, not just us. And the last thing we want to do is suffer in silence at home alone, right? There's nothing to be ashamed about in the human body. Nothing. All right. Diane says, I've been doing PTNS for almost 2 years. I have overlapping phenotypes, with one being nerve related. I like the PTNS better than taking the medication for overactive bladder, but worry it could cause neuropathy. Well, Diane, the only patient I've met, and I'm sorry it took me so long to get to your question, I apologize, was actually a nurse who called me, and then, this heavy wind, yikes. So we had a nurse call me to learn about it, and then I introduced her to Dr. Stoller, and she talked to Dr. Stoller, and we both said, be careful. It should never hurt. If it hurts, you got to turn it down. And she didn't listen. And so what did she do? She turned it up. And so every time she did it, it really hurt her. I mean, she was in physical pain during the procedure, and she ended up with nerve damage. She called me afterwards, like 2 months afterwards, and said, well, Jill, I did something I shouldn't have done. I turned it up, and now, like, we told you. And she's like, I know. I just wanted to get better, as I just turned it up anyway. And it's like, not when you're messing with nerves. You got to be really gentle with nerves. Do I think I have I mean, I probably did it a total of 25 times. Do I think I have a neuropathy from it? I don't think so. I mean, I I'm in a foot pain mode right now because I've been walking a lot, and I have. But I was told that was because I have no fat pads on the bottom of my feet, so I'm basically walking on bones, which is why I have to wear my Hokas. So I don't think that has anything to do with the ankle stem at all. All right, okay, you guys, I love your questions. Give me your questions. I double dog dare you to embarrass me. Okay, so we have another study on phenotypes in men with chronic pelvic pain. Now let's see what these are. You know, I sat on the AUA Male Pelvic Pain Guidelines Committee, where we created brand new national guidelines for men. But we didn't really talk about phenotypes. So let's see what they say. So this was, oh my God. And of course, the wonderful Ken Peters is one of the authors. So he's our top IC researcher. This came out this month. Purpose. Men with chronic prostatitis, chronic pelvic pain have heterogeneous symptoms and variable responses to treatment. Hello, I see. We sought to identify clinical and treatment factors associated with pain improvement. So they looked at 157 men who were at the Beaumont Corwell Urology Clinic. They're one of our top IC research centers too. Okay. Diffuse pelvic pain was the most common phenotype, 51%. The greatest improvements were associated with a penile block, a spermatic cord block, and hydrodistension with cautery of ulcers. So those were Hunner's lesion patients. Cystoscopy was performed only in 27%, but it frequently found Hunner's lesions and benign prostate hyperplasia. So most patients with chronic prostatitis, chronic pelvic pain experience clinically meaningful pain reduction following evaluation. Diffuse pain without clear triggers is common. Greater improvement with nerve blocks and treatment of Hunner's lesions supports a phenotype driven. Awesome. Awesome. Love it. You know, we have got to, one of the flaws in healthcare has consistently been this perception that every man with pelvic pain has prostatitis and every woman with pelvic pain has interstitial cystitis, whatever, and they're both incurable bladder diseases, blah, 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 blah. And you know, we know, as he said in that paper, the IC patient, this patient population is heterogeneous. We're not all the same. We're stunningly different. And so we can't make any broad claims that everybody has this or everybody has that. There's a lot of nuance in this patient population. If you develop symptoms while going through chemotherapy, you have chemocystitis. You do. If you develop symptoms after falling on your tailbone, then you've got a pelvic floor injury. If you've got widespread pain, multiple pain conditions, and we're probably dealing with a central nervous system problem. And if there's one thing that we've learned in the last 30 years is that bladder therapies don't work for most patients. Why? I mean, surely if this were a bladder disease, a bladder treatment would work, right? Yeah. How many of you were on Elmiron for decades? If a medication was healing you, you wouldn't need to keep taking it. That is what we call chasing the symptoms. Chasing the symptoms instead of identifying underlying causation. Phenotypes helps us identify underlying causation. So this is great. We need more of this. I am all over phenotyping, which is why our book, IC 101, is not just a bladder disease. It's the first and still only book for patients that talks about phenotypes. And our flare guide and our diet guide now will help you understand what flares you're most at risk of based upon your phenotype. It explains what the phenotypes are, etc., etc. So we're kind of, right? So IC 101, the diet guide. So it has a whole section on your phenotype determines your food sensitivity risk. And I go, this is me, by the way. And I go through all the different phenotypes. And then the same with our flare guide. The flare guide also talks about your flares depend upon your phenotype. So we're in such a good place now. I mean, we understand so much more now than we did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And also, don't forget, our latest magazine is out. The IC Optimist. This is our magazine for our members. And in this issue, we're talking about post-UTI hypersensitivity syndrome. A lot of patients out there who they believe they have infection. You had one infection, you treated the infection, antibiotics worked, your culture is no longer finding the bacteria, but darn it, you're still having all the symptoms. And so you go back to the doctor, it's still here, give me more antibiotics. Sometimes those symptoms persist because the nerves in the bladder are healing. They were damaged by the infection. And that healing process causes more sensitivity. Man, it is so windy out there. The allergies are crazy, and I feel it in my throat. What else do we have we have an update on Pentosyn. We now have our first patient reports. Patients who only used it, one patient who only used it as a bladder installation developed retinal disease. 3 patients who received it as an injection for arthritis also developed retinal disease. We have a great article on weight loss with IC because it's not so easy. We talk about some of the often missed causes of nocturia. If you're getting up at night, if you're peeing a lot, even if you stop drinking water, we explain what that is. What else do I have in here? Some spring food ideas. And I think this gets the award for the most fascinating bladder infection ever. You see that? Pink mold, my friend, pink mold. A couple months ago, I had a patient call me who was having very, very persistent UTI symptoms. Her urine cultures weren't growing anything. She had a next generation DNA urine test. They found a bacteria called Serratia. It's called pink mold. Pink mold grows on soap scum in your bathroom. And it is an incredibly dangerous mold. If you, for example, have pink mold in your bathtub and you take a bath, that pink mold is actually going to potentially infect your bladder. And these are severe, in some cases, life-threatening infections. If you have a cut on your arm and you take a shower and you grab the soap from, your soap container and the soap has a little bit of Serratia on it, you have just introduced this deadly bacteria into your bloodstream and patients go septic with it. This was brand new to me. I know that pink mold could be found in a UTI, and it's actually very common in UTIs. It's also very common. Here, hold on a sec. Let's see. Okay. It's an opportunistic infection that can grow on catheters, tubing, dressings, and surgical instruments. Patients with indwelling catheters appear to be at increased risk. A recent study of a 56-year-old man with an indwelling catheter developed a large abscess on a scrotum that contained E. coli and pink mold. It has also been found in the pericardium and in the inner chambers of the heart, where in one study it was found to be growing on a replaced mitral valve. Can you imagine that? A mold growing on a valve in your heart? That's just crazy. And they've had a lot of pink mold outbreaks in neonatal intensive care units and throughout the world, including in the United States. 18 infants were infected in a neonatal intensive care unit in Baltimore, Maryland. In an 8-year study, 242 patients were admitted to hospitals with these infections, with UTIs. And unfortunately, they were very, very drug resistant. So the irony is I read that, and then I went and inspected my house. And you know what? I found a little line of pink mold in my shower right above where I keep the soap. And it was really hard to kill. Like really hard to kill. I sprayed that sucker with Clorox. That didn't kill it. And then a couple other things didn't kill it. And then finally, what did I do? I think I did a bleach solution with a scrub brush, and that's what got rid of this tiny, I mean, it was like this long, this thin, right across the top of my soap container. So anyway, this is for the members of the IC network. If you're already a member, it's already on your member page. It's going, I think it went out last week by mail to those who get it by mail. You can get it for $25 a year as an e-doc, and this really, it keeps us going. And I think it's where we do our best work. So anyway, think about becoming a member. All right. Well, I think we may have come to the end of this meeting. I don't have any more questions. Are y'all done? So, wow, look at that wind. That's crazy. Wow. We once had a windstorm that was so severe with wind coming up the valley that you could lean into it and it held you up. And that's kind of what's happening right now outside. I'm actually kind of amazed we have power, because our power goes off all the time. Crazy. Diane says, I'm doing much better with my bladder, but a lot of problems with anal fissures due to pelvic floor dysfunction. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's just, this is a muscle group that takes a beating over time. And I think if we've learned anything as we get older, I mean, every day is kind of a revelation in a way of things that we did when we were younger that might actually not have been so good. And so my workouts that I used to do, 100 flights of stairs a day for 10 years on a Stairmaster, not having a clue that I destroyed all the fat pads on the bottom of my feet, right? And all the sitting that we do and all the bike riding that we do. And it's just over time traumatic to those tissues. Modern life is not necessarily optimal for how the human body is designed and meant to be used. We are meant to be up and walking around. We're not meant to sit, much less sit in the same position over time. And I was at the physical therapist on Friday because I just really want to make sure my back is really, really strong, because I don't want my scoliosis to get worse. And we were talking about wear and tear injuries, and it's just, and also something simple like alcohol. You know, I mean, I've never been a big drinker at all. I mean, I would, you know, have a glass of wine or a beer every now and then. And all the new research is coming out with alcohol. It's just heartbreaking how incredibly damaging it is, even especially to our biome, you know, to the bacteria in our stomach and in our bowel. And it's like, now that I'm looking at all that research, I'm like going, yeah, I don't see any point to drinking alcohol at all. If I'm going to drink, I'm going to do a de-alcoholized. I had a de-alcoholized beer last night, and I got up twice last night. Now, 2 nights ago, I slept all night. I slept 7 hours. Yeah. I mean, usually I'm up once a night, like every 4 hours, I'll get up. Last night I was up twice. I think I was up went to bed at 11. I think I was up at 2:30 and 5:30. And I think it was a de-alcoholized beer, honestly. So I don't know. I'm just like walking away from that now. I mean, my diet is so clean, and it's just, I mean, I drink water, and I drink very, very diluted lemonade. I don't drink strong lemonade. It's very, very diluted. That's like all I drink. And or coconut water, especially if I'm feeling dehydrated. That's it. My protein is primarily chicken or egg whites, and I do veg, and I do salad. And about once every 3 months, I'll buy a little tiny gluten-free peach pie, which I bought last night because I was feeling sorry for myself. And I had a third of it. You know, just trying to age gracefully and protect our body and get comfort. My stomach has been that. The other really, really interesting thing to me, to be really honest, is I have long had gas in my stomach in a way after meals, and I would have. I mean, this goes back to my 20s, and basically, who doesn't at some point in time? But I can now really see FODMAPs more. I can see that I react to FODMAPs more. Foods that are high in fructose. Like I made butternut squash soup, which was like one of my favorite things to drink. I mean, to eat. And so I cooked a butternut squash and I blended it up, put a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of oregano or something like that. I don't like spices. I like the taste of the actual vegetable, or I don't put sauces and stuff on stuff. I just do a little tiny bit of salt and pepper pretty much on everything that I eat. And what could be healthier than butternut squash soup? And I put a little bit of yogurt in it. And yet I was very uncomfortable afterwards because it's very, very high in FODMAPs. And I'm like Googling, all right, what's the FODMAP level for how much butternut squash can you eat without getting all this gas? And it was like a third of a cup. And I had literally 2 cups. It's like, so I'm just being really attentive to that. And really asking myself, how do I feel after I eat this? Like in the morning, I'm really good with egg whites, and I do a gluten-free. I can make gluten-free pancakes or gluten-free muffin, and you know, or every now and then I'll make myself a little smoothie, and that's it. And usually during the day, like all I've eaten today so far. What did I eat today? Oh, I had a bowl of Kick cereal and with a little banana, which is why I'm always hungry after I do these. And I want to go walk, but I'm like, yeah, you haven't eaten anything. You have to go eat something. So I've got rotisserie chicken in my refrigerator, and I've got veg, and that's what I will eat after I'm done with a little piece of peach pie. And then I'm going to watch the BTS broadcast from Stanford because I like BTS. Make me happy. Diane says, I'm trying to find a pelvic floor physical therapist that can help with relaxing and coordination of pelvic floor muscles to have complete bowel movements. Those that work hard with those issues seem harder to find. This type of physical therapy is called rectal balloon training, which isn't available with most pelvic floor therapists. Wow, I've never heard of that. Yikes. Doesn't it? It sounds, you know, as I was saying to somebody on Thursday or Friday, it would be so much easier if this were a shoulder problem. The fact that it's in between your hip bones, inside your pelvis, makes this a very complex injury, because the only way you can truly reach these muscles, to rehabilitate these muscles, is through the vaginal wall and through the rectal wall. And it's awkward, and it's I have never found it to be uncomfortable. I mean, physically, it's not uncomfortable for me, but it's not easy. And in your case, where you're dealing with coordination of muscles that are contributing to you having bowel movements, I can imagine that it would be even harder. But you can always start with, the website pelvicrehab.com. What I would do is I would go to pelvicrehab.com. I would search for your zip code, do a 50-mile radius or a 100-mile radius, and just call them and ask them if they, number one, are they pelvic floor certified? Although that list will show you. And then number two, do they have any experience with that? Diane says, that is so true. It is definitely awkward, so I'm not thrilled about doing it, but believe it could help. Pain is pain. And once you have had severe agonizing pain, and you know how traumatic and it is, and how and suffering, because it's suffering. This is not little pain. This is intense, agonizing pain, difficult to ignore. And it's just so hard because your family members and your friends can't see that broken shoulder. They don't know that you have something broken in your pelvis. They can't see it. They're like, what's wrong with Jill now? What's wrong with Diane now? And if we had a easier way of showing them that injury, I think it would help a lot. But now, I personally have experienced tremendous relief from internal work. And there's like a part of me that would like, can I go back and get a physical therapy degree? I'd love to specialize in pelvic floor work. I mean, I just, I take all the emotion out of it, and I just look at it kind of academically when I'm doing it. It's like, okay, what muscle are we touching right now? Where does it go? Does it go from this bone to this bone? And I just kind of get lost in the anatomy a little bit more. And that takes all the uncomfortable shame, fear away. It's just like, okay, yeah, look at that. That's a really weird little muscle knot in my obturator internus. Let's work on that. And so, Diane, there's a link right above, pelvicrehab.com. Short for rehabilitation, pelvicrehab.com. So just, and the book that I think is truly life-changing for anybody with pelvic issues, and I really think you should get it, is this book, Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain by Dr. Jerome Weiss. This is a phenomenal book, and it will teach you everything you need to know about where the muscles are located, where the nerves are located, and what happens when they get injured. And he has a section, once you do the anatomy, which is like the first couple of chapters. So like the first couple of chapters are, let me give you an example. The first couple, the first couple of chapters really just show you where things are. They give you, it's just a really, really good anatomy lesson. And it's important. So like here you can see pelvic floor muscles. And you can see that little round thing right there. That's the perineal body. I used to have most of my pain right there. And everybody said it was vulvodynia. Nope, it wasn't vulvodynia. It was all the muscles pulling on this little tiny structure called the perineal body. So, and like, watch those hip rotators. Talks about the muscles that are involved with urinary control, the sexual function. The perineal body is a dense mass or knob of fibrous connective tissue. Yeah, that was the bane of my life. And look at this. Here are the three, here, hold on. I probably need to cover up this penis. Oh, God. Hold on. Okay. So look, you can see the 3 layers of muscles. These are the levators on the outside. Then we've got the middle layer of muscles, and then we got the deeper muscles, right here, right? But then he goes into treating chronic pain, pelvic pain holistically. He goes into trigger points, where the trigger points are located and how to treat those. I have a lot of trigger points in my glute. You know, trigger points in your upper thighs, trigger points down off of your rectus abdominalis. He shows how to do nerve blocks. So here's a rectum. Here's a finger in the vagina that's coming over, touching this nerve. And you can see they're inserting the needle right there to numb that nerve. But let's just go to the section on the rectum. This is a really it's just a fantastic book. What happens when you sit on a bicycle seat? That bicycle seat is pushing right up against the pudendal nerve right there, also known as bike rider syndrome. Breaking Through Chronic Pelvic Pain by Dr. Jerome Weiss. It's in the IC Network shop. It's $29.99, worth every penny. It's $36. It was $36 on Amazon. Dr. Jerome Weiss was a friend of mine. He passed away a year ago. And I used to order direct from him, which is why we have a lower price. I don't know if his estate is still going to do that. So I got my last shipment of like 50 books 6 months ago, and I think we've got like 10 left. This is really an important picture here. This is a healthy nerve. And if you look at this nerve, so, you know, you kind of think that a nerve is just like one single nerve just flowing through there. It's not. This is a nerve bundle. And there's actually several nerves inside the nerve bundle, and you're going to see blood vessels because nerves need blood supply to function normally, right? So like here's the nerve. So you can see all these nerves that are in a nerve bundle. But when you fall or you sit on a bike seat, what happens to that nerve bundle? Look at that. It gets injured. It gets compressed. It's a physical injury. I mean, when you fall on your butt, you slide into home base. If you just stumble, you know, you get a bruise, right? Well, that means the fall was sufficient enough to break the blood vessels. But falls are also sufficient enough to hurt nerves. Okay. So I'll give you one example, and then we're going to go to the rectal section, okay? Let's do Bill's story. Bill's painful history exemplifies how symptoms are spread by double crush syndrome. He was 75 years old at the time of his first appointment and came to me complaining about all the problems I'm about to describe. He had been an avid cyclist for many years. A year prior to consulting me, he developed left buttock tailbone pain after switching to a recumbent bike. When the pain began to spread over a wider radius, he saw a neurosurgeon who evaluated him with a pelvic and lumbosacral MRI that found nothing, but he was forced to alter his behavior. The former biker now minimized sitting because of intensified pain, yet standing, lying down, or sitting on a toilet seat decreased pain. He then began experiencing burning around the rectum. Gastroenterologist treated that with cortisone foam and suppositories. Next, he started experiencing painful spasms in his left hip rotator, for which he got steroid injections. And suddenly, one night, Bill was awakened from sleep with severe penile pain, prompting a visit to the ER where he was given pain meds. The final blow was the onset of urinary frequency, where he was given Flomax, etc. Eventually, all of his physicians gave up trying to understand or find the cause of his pain and simply treated him with narcotics. Finally, one night in a restaurant, Bill got the break he'd been praying for. A woman who had been watching him stopped by his table to say, "By the way you're sitting, I wonder if you have pudendal nerve entrapment, like my husband." Bill called my office the next day for an appointment. When I examined him, I confirmed that he did have pudendal nerve entrapment at the ligament level, for which we treated him with nerve blocks and nerve mobilization in combination with muscle release. Bill's story provides a compelling example of the double crush syndrome wreaking havoc with the pudendal nerve. The initial symptom of buttock or tailbone pain was caused by a pudendal nerve that was entrapped in the area. I would guess that asymptomatic or perhaps mildly symptomatic nerve irritation had occurred from years of strenuous biking. The switch to the recumbent bike, though designed to minimize the problem that Bill had been developing, nonetheless exacerbated it by exerting yet another type of pressure. The problem then spread in succession to the nerve, rectal, penile, and perineal branches, all of which are restricted in movement and subjected to stretch and friction injuries. Okay. I'm telling you, there's no better book than this book for anybody with muscle stuff. All right. But here, hold on. Let me just go to I get so distracted. You want to see the pudendal nerve as it's coming off of the sacrum? You can see how it wraps through the muscles, like your piriformis muscle. So if you have a tight muscle, it's going to squeeze that nerve. You're going to have sciatica. All right, hold on a sec. The urinary problem area, he talks about IC extensively, vulvodynia. You want to see the nerves around the vulva? There you go, my friends. Look at all those nerves. You sitting on that bike seat? Hello, you're sitting on all those nerves. Human body was not designed to sit on a bicycle. All right, hold on. Anal, perineal, tailbone, and orgasmic pain. Okay, hold on one second. In 1838, Jean-Claude Recamier made the first recorded reference to muscle dysfunction as a source of anal pain. Because many of the pelvic muscles attached to or near the coccyx, trigger points, or tension in the muscles can easily refer pain to the rectum and anus. He talks about pain with orgasm, chronic pain. Oh my God, it's just so good. Anyway, if you have any pelvic floor issues, get this book. You won't regret it. Listen, if you buy it from me and you don't like it, I'll buy it back from you. I promise. I've made that offer every single time. Nobody ever buys it back from me. I mean, nobody has ever returned this book. It is that good. It's a little academic for somebody who didn't go to college. You know, it's a little intimidating at first, but it's still an outstanding book. Diane said, I found a number of a pelvic floor physical therapists in a larger city 45 minutes away, and I'll just start calling or emailing. Yeah. Yeah, just explain your situation, honey. Just explain your situation. And speaking of pudendal neuralgia, my left butt cheek is now vibrating, which means I have sat, because that's what I have. I have a pudendal neuralgia on my left side by my sit bone. So if I sit too long, it starts to vibrate. It doesn't hurt. It just, I get this fluttering sensation in my left glute. All right. I think we're going to call it here. My plan is to be here next Sunday. Oh, you already have the book. Good. Check it out. As always, thank you for listening to the very, very end. For those of you who are listening to this after the fact, if you like what I do, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. We hit 1 million views on YouTube. Yeah. I'm really proud of that. It took me years, but we did it. It's a good way to educate other people about this. I'm always available by phone. I work with patients every day, all day. It's just first come, first serve. The phone number is at the top of our website, and it's also right there. All right, guys. I will see you later. Have a great week. All right. I'm going to say goodbye to YouTube. See you later.